Hey, yeah, excited sitting down with a couple of our team members to wrap up the month of January. We've been focusing on human trafficking dynamics, trying to do the kind of the wide conversation about trafficking itself, because trafficking is not just you talk about one thing and you've hit it all. Like there's a lot of nuance and a lot of shade between the black and white of human trafficking. So we're excited to have Monica with us on our team. Monica leads all of our outreaches here in Redding, where we're doing direct intervention into the sex for sale landscape in our town, Shasta County. Monica, how are you?
I'm doing good. Yes.
It's good to have you with us. So we're stoked you're here. And then we've also got Carol. Carol's one of our third year students this year. She helps us in all kinds of ways. She touches everything and is kind of one of our technology gurus. So I don't know what we'd do without Carol. Like nothing would happen without Carol. So Carol, what's up?
Hey.
It's good to see you. How are you today?
Good. How about you?
I'm doing good. Yeah, I'm really happy to be sitting down with you two. Thanks for joining me for this. We try to do like a monthly wrap up to every theme and just, yeah, maybe approach some of the takeaways from the different interviews that we were posting. And we had a good run of interviews this month. We had 5 different sit down. So this will be our 6th in a month. I don't know how that works. We're supposed to do one a week. How do you do one a week and end up with 6? There's not 6 weeks in a month. I don't know. We'll figure it out. It'll make it somewhere. And you, Carol, it sounded like for you, you were most impacted by the survivor story that we shared. So we were able to sit down with a survivor leader that's a friend of ours, Angelica. How was that for you? Any kind of takeaways or anything that felt like it's hot on your radar screen, like a bigger blip on your radar screen?
Yeah, so it was like very impactful for me. She came like in person for class, and also like she did the interview.
Yeah.
And it's very, very impactful because I put like myself in her place, like how the things went through, like
Yeah.
when she was a kid, like she had like a parents that loved her, but she still like had some kind of I don't know, I don't feel loved, like I want to keep
Yeah.
myself, like the struggle that all the teenagers go through.
Yeah.
And then we are very, very vulnerable.
I know I'm interrupting you, but I love that you're doing this, because I think we can so often we look at this kind of atrocity, this real trauma in our culture, and we think it's too grandiose. I would never come across that. But I love what you're doing. Like you're putting yourself in a survivor's shoes and recognizing, well, like all of us have vulnerabilities. So I'm sorry to interrupt you. Keep
Oh
going.
yeah, that's fine. Yeah, and then what I've noticed, like these days, like the parents, they are very absent. They work so much and they don't have time to look up the children. So they are very, very vulnerable. And then, like, the thought comes and then, oh, I'm gonna run away. I'm gonna pack my stuff. I'm gonna leave, and they don't know about the world. And then when
Wow.
you see yourself, you were like, oh my gosh, like how did I come here? How, like what have I done?
Like
And then
how
you
did
were
I,
in trouble.
you mean, how did I end up here? Right. When you're saying that, like, how did I get to
Yeah.
this place? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What have I done, And then you ended up in trouble.
Yeah. And she ended up in a really vulnerable place that she had no idea existed. I mean, that's the kicker of the story. She was going through very normal teenage dynamics of not feeling accepted and loved. She did have a unique element to her story where she'd suffered sexual abuse within her family. So that definitely set her up for an extreme level of vulnerability. However, the way she reached out was probably how a lot of us would reach out. You reach out to some guy that you met and he seemed like a nice guy and he seemed safe. And so she makes a phone call, or, hey, I'm running away. Like how many teenagers have had that thought? I'm just going to run away and everything will get better. Right. So I love I love what you're saying. It's like, hey, we all have that in our story to some degree. And yet look where her story ended up. Like she
Yeah.
ended up in the worst of the worst. And
Mhm.
again, a lot of us are like, well, that's not even real. It's not something I need to worry about. And then you hear her story, you're like, oh, that really exists. This is crazy. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I like when I was a teenager, I wanted to run away too. It's
Yeah,
like, you know what? I'm gonna pack my stuff. I'm gonna leave my house. I
totally.
can't do this anymore. But thank God I didn't do it because I could have been in trouble, like
Yeah.
her. And actually like sometimes it's not just that we picture like, oh, the trafficker is like, oh, someone that is gonna put you in a van, or can be like anyone manipulating you, making you do stuff and to feel good, oh, you're gonna get money, you're gonna
Yeah.
get better life, I can give you this and that, and then you go like, oh, because I don't have support in my family, I go with the flow because this guy told me he loves me, and this guy told me that I'm gonna get money. It's the story that I hear, like even in Brazil. I'm
Yeah.
from Brazil, and there are a lot of prostitutes, and it's legal there, like the prostitution. And
Yeah.
then when I went to the streets to talk to those girls, they said
Yeah.
like, oh, but I have children, and someone gave me this opportunity. Like they said, I can have a better life. I can have
Mm,
money to feed my children. And then you go with this flow, but you think they are not traffickers because it's your choice, right? But
yeah.
actually, it's not because you're being manipulated,
Totally.
as Angelica was manipulated too.
Yeah. And I mean, and in her story, you see some
Yeah.
pretty powerful dynamics that even after she was out of a trafficking scenario, she was still very vulnerable to
Yes.
that which would exploit her, to scenarios that were not good for her. And so you could see in her story, which again, it's not like we're highlighting Angelica. I think this is true for a lot of people, that you may be vulnerable to certain things that are not good for you. And until she had really reconciled some of the pain that she'd been through as a child, she wasn't able to really heal and move towards things that were stabilizing, or situations that would be quote unquote good for her. Do you know what I mean? So it's
Yes.
like, ended up in an abusive relationship as an example, ended up, addicted to drugs, still using drugs. And again, none of that is to say Angelica is a bad person. We're just highlighting the dynamic of, like, people have vulnerabilities, and
Yes.
healing isn't just, I need to get away from my trafficker. Like, healing includes a lot more.
Yes.
I think her story is so profound, so important. I think there are a lot of survivor stories out there that, when I spend time with survivors, it's sobering, it's enlightening. It makes the work that we're engaged in terms of trying to do restoration in the trafficking space, it makes the work more real, less
Yes.
clinical, less details. It's just like, we're talking about real people, and we're talking about real humans that have real vulnerabilities. I
Yeah.
do think that survivor piece of the puzzle, if you're not having the survivor piece of the puzzle, it's like you're kind of missing the whole boat. It's not like you're just missing a piece of the puzzle, you're missing the
Hmm.
whole boat, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Um, so yeah, and you mentioned earlier, like, she spent some time with us. We've had the opportunity to do some stuff together with her, like
Yeah.
personally in classes. And yeah, she's just a beautiful individual.
Yeah.
She just inspires me so much. But I again, I think trafficking can look so grandiose and so big, and recognizing it's actually as simple as vulnerable people being preyed upon and exploited. And we all have unique vulnerabilities. All of us have certain vulnerable things that make us vulnerable. So, being aware, and like knowing how to have boundaries in relationships. And if
Yeah.
people are giving you gifts, it's like, well, where's this headed? And yeah, we also told a bit of the NCAT story, talked about what we're doing here locally in our community. Rosie and myself were able to unpack that for a bit. That felt like a valuable conversation for maybe leaders or people in different communities that are looking to get things going, getting stuff started, get it off the ground. We had a lot of practical kind of just telling the way we were putting one foot in front of the other. And in that we were talking about some of our outreach work here locally. I don't know if there's anything that you wanted to share about that, Monica, because you weren't in that recording or in that interview. Anything that you've seen, because you've been with us in doing the massage parlor outreach for a few years now. Anything that you'd wanted to add to that maybe Rosie and I didn't bring up? Like some of the joy that you're having in going out and some of the stuff that you're seeing happening, that's good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And the one thing very highlight me very fun things like when we take the student go out for the outreach, the first time gonna be the totally different experience for them, because every time I ask the student when they go out for the first time, I say, is that the same your expectation on you, or is it totally different thing? And they say, yeah, totally different. They just release the pressure because they're kind of nervous because they watch the movie. They say, oh, trafficking thing, people, handcuffed, and then they're going to talk to the trafficker. They're so nervous. But when they go out with us, they feel, okay, they're just ordinary. They're just human. They're just a lady, and we can talk. They just talk to them naturally, conversation.
I love
that. Also very easy to reach out their heart, because those women, they be work alone and they don't feel people really value them. So when a student spoke to them, actually it's very easy to open heart conversation. So the student would tell me, say, yeah, I think it's fun. They want to go out again.
I love that you're bringing that up, because again, trafficking, and it like looks, you say trafficking and it's like, oh, it's always a grandiose thought. It's always a heavy, and it is heavy. And there are a lot of, real heavy dynamics at play. However, like it's cool to demystify and kind of deconstruct and get out of there, like get in the real space, be on the level with people. We had a gal that is in our outreach team that worked for a large organization. It's more like an international footprint, and they're doing great work. And they do a ton of prevention and awareness all around the globe. So very important and necessary work, but she'd never had the opportunity of actually doing outreach. And she happened to be on my team the first week, and she was like weeping. She was like, I can't believe I just get to go actually talk with women. And she also thought it would be very like a big deal. And she walked away like, wow, it was so simple. We were just befriending them and developing a friendship with these women. I'm like, yep, that's what we're doing. We're just trying to like help these individuals feel seen and known, and that like treat them like a real person. And she was blown away. She was like, this is the best thing I've ever done. I can't believe I get to do this. And I'm like, oh, it's so simple what we're doing. And but yeah, I love that you bring that up. It's like, and that's what needs to happen, is like friendships need to be developed, and people need bridges. If they're going to come out of the life, maybe it's not like jumping off a cliff. Maybe it's like, having contact with some real people that are friendly, that treat them differently than a buyer would, or that their trafficker would. And they have an opportunity, like a glimpse of love, like a glimpse at like normalcy, right?
I also hear for one of our students, I think she only got maybe a couple times, maybe 10 times, but because the relationship we have, building, spending time with the woman, and she's a social worker, that kind of background. So for her, she was like, wow, I didn't realize I can make him friend with those women. We can be friends. So she feel like, wow, it's very different, because they are not just the project, or like a object or like a client, but they also can be like a friend. So she's very it's very changing her perspective.
Which I mean, for me as a leader in the church, that's our mission, is like, how can we bridge the gap? How can we get into places where people know they're too far gone to be reached, or they're in too dark of a place for me to actually be able to be effective there? And so it's like duality. Like I want to reach people that may be perceived as unreached, but I want to empower the church to recognize how they can be in part of that, that it's not impossible, right? So we're simplifying things. And yeah, if those lights are going on in believers' minds, like, well, I can befriend them, and I can, because they're humans, they're real people. Sometimes we have this like line between people in darkness and people who are not in darkness. And how could I ever get there? It's like, I don't, like, the Lord just, like, his arms are open to everybody, and he has value for every person. If they're an addict, if they're in prostitution, if they're an avid churchgoer, it doesn't matter. Like, his heart is for everybody, right? So yeah, I'm really thankful that we're able to do that outreach, and not the most impossible thing to get done is the kind of the punchline to that story. Like, you can get this going in your communities, for those that might be listening to this. We also were able to interview one of our local community partners. So it's a medical professional in our community that's doing some forensic interviews. And in that, he's really changing the game for the way our hospitals are recognizing trafficking victims. So he's developing intake protocols that will go statewide. This is exciting. Like, it's literally being adopted at a statewide level. Because like in my conversations with him, Dr. Dugan, he was letting me know, he's literally like, trafficking victims come to us to get healed, like abuse that they've suffered, injuries that have been incurred and put on them by their traffickers. They come to us to get healed. We fix them and we send them right back to their trafficker. And he's just like pulling his hair out, like, we've got to change this equation. So the intake protocols he's creating are helping to identify, oh, you're actually in a trafficking relationship. And then he can intervene. He can literally slip in and help these individuals get into services. Fascinating conversation for me. And again, we just value our community partners, people that are on the ground, frontline professionals that are getting stuff done that we couldn't get done. I'm not a trained doctor, so we need all hands on deck, right? But in that interview, we also threw out the actual request, like, we're pushing forward on victim housing in our community. So over 18 victims of trafficking, we're looking to set up safe space in our community. And so that need is still out there. If there are people out there listening to this that want to donate, that want to give, that have expertise in that space, just direct message us on our Instagram page, which is @Justice Collective. And we'll be able to connect you to what it is we're trying to build resource-wise. We were able to have a great conversation with Benji Nolo, the founder and president or director of Exodus Cry. He's got a lot to say. I mean, I love that conversation. It feels like you're talking. He's such an intellectual. He's so learned. Yeah, his information is very inspiring to me. Anything that stood out to you, Monica, from that interview, or anything that felt like you wanted to bring up, or a takeaway?
Yes, I think what Benji did is so important, so valuable, because like you said, like a trafficking, people might be just from one angle to see the whole picture, but we didn't realize actually trafficker. We would also think about, yeah, trafficker, that bad guy, that bad people, but we don't really get the perspective from them, why they are doing these. Maybe because they've been growing up in that kind of pornography, like in this hypersexualized culture, that really impact their mind, maybe when they was little. So they don't really know how to treat women right, and maybe with a healthy way to see the woman as just like a object, So because Angie spent a lot of time, I think they spent a lot of time, like a couple years, really going to the center of those, the prom hub. They go there to video them, like a conversation with them, to hear the real story, even from the victim, from the survivor. So we can really see exactly what's going on there behind the scene. But it's just for that, because even sometimes I talk to the student, talk to my friend, there will get a lot like insight, some new idea and a new perspective, because they never thought about, wow, that is the real behind the scene. They don't know that is the hidden place. So that's why Benji, he filmed those movie and the film. That is very important, because when he also go to that place to video with them, like spending time with the victim, or like maybe Kim or John, so he can know that, okay, what were they thinking? What is their perspective? But also learning more from them, because something maybe is our own understanding, but when we get that place, connect with them, so we can see, okay, something new, which we don't know. We didn't know about that. So it's like a
Yeah,
more,
I love like what they're doing as an organization is really a bridge between
Yes.
secular culture and faith culture. Like he's really speaking to both kind of ecosystems in the earth. And I will say this as a leader in the church, I do think oftentimes people, as people of faith, sometimes we're not willing, or we're just not motivated enough to do the deep dive and to really learn what's going on and what's taking place with you. We have kind of surface level assessments of solution. And, obviously the gospel is entirely a solution and very transformational, but hey, we'll just pray for them. So, sometimes we like just glibly like, hey, we'll just pray for them and it'll all fix itself. But I love what they're doing. Like they're really doing a deep dive, and they're learning about the roots of the problem, and they're educating us as the faith community, but their education isn't just coming through a Christian lens. Like it speaks to secular society just as well as it does to a faith community. And I think there's so much value there, because I do think education is a big piece of solution. When you understand something, I mean, for instance, like what he's doing with his latest film, Raised on Porn, like individuals who suffer with a porn addiction, if they take the time to expose themselves to this type of information, they're, in my opinion, less likely to persist with that addiction, because they see that addiction feeds, it's literally fuel for the sex trade. And so when people start connecting the dots of this behavior links to this systemic issue, I think there's a very clear call to change. And it's easier to recognize, oh, what I can do to change. I can do this. I can stop consuming porn. You know what I mean? So again, just so important, I think, and I do think as the church, like becoming educated about it, the issues we have passion for, it's important. Instead of just saying, hey, I'm passionate about something, but you're not really aware of what it looks like to make a difference there, even understand the dynamics of what's going on in that space, right? So they're doing some good work. I do say they're probably one of the larger preventative organizations on the planet right now.
And his movies are very good, very good.
They're well done, right? They're just like, I mean, they're stellar. And it's not like just a cheesy, excuse the language, a cheesy Christian film. Like it's just a well-made film that like anybody's going to watch, whether they're a person of faith or not,
Yeah. Like you said, it's not only for like a Christian community, but also the passion and compassion what he's doing right now is reaching to people's heart. So people by watching the film get more education. So it's like get a more like a motivation. So when they get like inspired, they get motivation. They say, okay, I want to do something. Even they said I want to do something, but I don't know start from where and how. But the education also, bring more the resources. It's like you said, they can take in do the little thing, but little by little. That also.
And it's fuel. And it's fuel for a fire. Like if you feel a passion for something, like you need to be exposed to content. And like they're kicking out content that's very inspirational and very it's fuel. So I love that you're making that point. I love what he said in that interview too. Like he said, the biggest question we get is what can we do? And I love his answer. He's like, honestly, you have to answer that question for yourself. Like I can tell you some simple things you can do, but honestly, it was like, you have to take responsibility for your passion and figure out where you can play your part. And he did offer tons of resources. So we'll do a post on our Instagram, but I'll quickly breeze over some of these. He mentioned a book called Being Bought, another book paid for by Rachel Moran. He mentioned the documentary Lilia Forever. Their YouTube page is Magic Lantern Pictures, which has several of their films on there. He also mentioned the book, The Natashas, which then the film, The Whistleblower, was loosely based on that book. And again, and he also referenced there's a whole website devoted to prostitution research and the dynamics around prostitution. So, I definitely encourage you, go back to that interview, listen to the section where he mentions a ton of resources, because we do need education. We do need fuel. We're not supposed to run at things in pure ignorance and just on our own steam. Right. So yeah, that was good. That was really valuable. We also did maybe this could have felt like a little left field interview. I don't personally see these kind of interviews happening a lot. I was stoked we were able to facilitate one with a buyer. We spent time with Richie Cruz, who is the founder of an organization called Porn Scar, and his porn addiction, his porn habit, which he formed as a very young boy, led to actually purchasing sex. So setting up, calling a sex for sale ad and engaging in sex for sale, and, nearly destroyed it. He was a married man at the time, obviously nearly destroyed his marriage. But from all of that, this ministry called Porn Scar was birthed. And he has, his voice and his message to people that are suffering with sex addiction, I thought that was so profound. It was so clear, so resonant. He called pornography the activity of the lonely. And he just over and over and over again was challenging people to come into the light and share what it is that they're struggling with. And he's just talking about embracing people and accepting people where they're at. And certainly that applies to more than somebody with a porn habit. I mean, like, we all have vulnerabilities or issues. And in our society, it's like we have to be strong, and I can't talk about my weaknesses. And I love that interview. I thought it was so powerful. One of the things that he brought up too that isn't highlighted enough was his revelation that, like, the evil and diabolical nature of the porn industry. Like, it's not a simple, innocent fantasy. It's like when you get behind that curtain, there is just straight up crime happening, and exploitation of individuals, and violence, and rape. And it's like, and I think, like, for individuals that are struggling with porn, you're like, well, no, it's just this innocent thing, and it helps me in my, like, I need a release. And then, but when you get behind the curtain and you understand, like, there's real diabolical things going on in that industry, I mean, how can you enjoy that fantasy? You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think what Richie's doing is so powerful and necessary, because at the end of the day, if we take buyers out of the equation, the problem literally will go away. So there needs to be a lot more done there. We also mention and try to highlight the Nordic model, how there's legislation in certain parts of the world that really mediate trafficking diminishing. They point accountability at the buyers, not those who are in the sex for sale space, the solicitors, those who are in prostitution. And so if you put accountability towards buyers, it immediately changes the flow of demand for that particular product. And right now in the States, the accountability is still primarily pointed at those who are soliciting, or those who are in the life, those who are in the commercial sex landscape. If we can just switch that quickly, I feel like the problem, like, minimizes quickly. So yeah, a lot to talk about. It was fun. Stoked to hear from you guys, from Carol and from Monica. So we're going to be shifting gears, going into another month, which means we're going to another theme. I don't even know how we do this. How do we, like, go after all this stuff? And it feels like every month is so packed with things to unpack and discuss and go after. We're going to approach this big idea of addiction. Like, it's like a massive thing that we're going to try to unpack and talk to people that have come out of addictive cycles, talk to professionals or working with those that are suffering with addictions. And, it is interesting. Like, that is one of those central kind of crux issues where there's a lot of drug addiction or various kinds of addiction. It bleeds into more and different varied injustices, places where people are really struggling and suffering. And So hopefully there'll be some value there. Again, our hope with these is to bring hope, shed light on people who are working solution, talk about ways that you as Jesus followers can engage and play your part. So be looking for those interviews to be dropping soon. And again, as we always say, if any of the stuff we're doing is resonating with you, we'd love it if you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is again, just Justice Collective. Hit that like button when you can, and then also share the stuff. If there's one particular interview that really resonates with you, if you're able to share that stuff on your Instagram, on your Facebook page, yeah, it'll help us spread the word. And again, our goal here isn't so much to make a big name for ourselves. Our goal here is to help those that are doing the work get increased notice so that traffic can flow their way in terms of resources, both people and finances. And then also that as these stories are being shared, hopefully more people's eyes are opening to ways they can engage, because we see that all the time. People are passionate about a subject, but they're like, I don't really know what to do with this passion. So ultimately the hope is like, get involved. The world is run by those who show up, right? All right. Peace. I think with that, we're going to say goodbye. Any parting words, Monica or Carol? Anything you guys would like to say as we say adios?
No, that's fine.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us. Monica, thank you. Peace. Carol,
thank you.
Peace. Actually, with Carol, it's always this.
It's like this.
We always throw the shakas out because that's so normal in Brazil. Like a lot of people throw the shakas in Brazil, right?
I don't know.
Or
I
is
actually
that
know. I
just the
think
thing
this is
you-
my thing. Yeah.
All right. Good. I like that. Let's do this. Awesome. All right. We love you guys. And again, thanks for joining
Love
us
you.
here at
Thank
Justice
you.
Collective. We will see you soon.